Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere on the 18th of April in '75. Hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. But Roger Tanner does, because he was riding the other direction to warn the other people along with Mr. Dawes. Oh, and Roger Tanner just happens to be with us. Here he is. Roger Tanner, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Roger Tanner from Findlay, Ohio, where he made lots of friends among the people of the government. Or was it the other way around, Roger?
I got them both ways, some good, some bad.
Okay, and on my other side, from Ohio also, is Jackie Wickens, who has a story to tell. She fought and is still fighting her fraudulent mortgage foreclosure. So just as a disclaimer, if you haven't watched Take Back America before, I'm not an attorney. I went to law school for 3 years, and this was my first lesson about lawyers. I signed up at Van Norman Law School on Western Avenue and Olympic Boulevard in Los Angeles. I paid my money, and then the school collapsed. On the second semester, after I paid my money, they took my money, and then they went out of business. Says, nothing we can do. We got your money. Goodbye. That was my first lesson in attorney ethics. But did you know that lawyers and attorneys are not the same thing? Roger here could be considered a lawyer. He's learned in the law. Maybe not every part of the law, but he's very, very familiar with things that those of you who are fighting your fraudulent mortgage foreclosure will want to know about. And we're hoping to set up a date sometime out, maybe in December or January, where we'll do a conference, something like what we did on February 21st, except we're going to have a package, right, Roger?
Yes.
We'll have a package, so when you sign up, pay your money, when you come, you're going to get a complete package that'll tell you exactly what to do to fight your own attorney, the bank's attorneys, and the crooked judges. And the crooked judges are too many and too numerous, so I just refer to them as Judge Schmuck, because to run all their names by you would take the entire 90 minutes. Jackie has been fighting her battle in Ohio for what, 10 years, Jackie?
10.
Wow. Lawyers don't always tell the truth, but did you ever see a lawyer admit they signed documents under penalty of perjury and file motions they have not even read? Listen to this. It dates back about 6 years to 2010. It's just a few seconds, and we'll be right back here with Roger and Jackie. William Wagener, glad you tuned in.
Did the firm authorize its administrative staff, which I'll just describe as non-lawyers, so inclusive of secretaries, paralegals, legal assistants, to sign attorneys' names to complaints and file them knowing that the attorney had not read the document?
Yes.
Has that practice ended?
Yes.
Was that a practice in 2006?
I believe so.
Wow. That was an attorney during a videotape deposition, and he's telling you, yes, we signed documents we had not read. Other people prepared them. We just signed them. Now, I'm not an attorney. I chose after 2.5 years of law school in Orange County not to become a lawyer. It's not that I didn't want to help people. I just decided attorneys were not there to help people. Most of them, the vast majority of them. I mean, I know hundreds of attorneys. I can only name Michael Mins in Houston, Texas, who defeated the IRS and got the IRS attorneys disbarred in the 9th District federal system, the federal system. Then there's Susan Yu of Los Angeles and Tom Hurricane Mesereau, who defended Michael Jackson and blew away all the fabricated, phony, faked evidence. Then I'm watching another one right now down in Los Angeles, but I'll talk about that a little later. Roger, tell us short and simple, before we go to Jackie, why most people can defeat the banks.
Well, I don't think it's actually you're defeating the banks. The banks and the attorneys have a protocol that are for profit and not for morality. And if you look at it, our financial system is created on some assistance, but a lot of lies. And what happens is a bank is to make profit, of course, and they know on many loans that they are no possible way that they're going to be able to be repaid. They forge and fraudulently alter documents so that they get loans out to people that cannot afford them, are not qualified, with one thing in mind. If you pull up the mortgages, and those folks of you out there, the deeds of trust, if you pull one of those out, you will see right in the very document, which then when you sign it is no longer a document, it's security, but it says specifically in there under insurance that the insurance is to pay the lender in case the borrower defaults or fails to make the payments. What's the problem here? It's so simple. Well, if you pay an insurance, and it goes into complete description of the insurance in that very starting out as a document, but once it's signed, it's a security instrument. And so you understand a security instrument is money. You can't make a copy of it and expect it to not be charged with counterfeiting. However, nobody seems to know that or does anything about it. But if you look into it, the instrument that is used is created. It's an instrument created to make sure that there is no possible way that a bank can be a loss on that agreement. The insurance company pays for it. The insurance company is solicited by the lender. It is paid for by the borrower. So it's an open and shut case. If it fails, it's paid for. Okay?
It's paid for,
It's
even
paid
when it
for.
fails. Even when they stop paying, it's paid for by the insurance company, which the homeowner was already paying a small addition to, whether it's self-insured or insured with someone else.
I read, quote, on this, mortgage insurance means insurance providing lender against the non-payment or default on the loan. It's right there.
Sure is. Mortgage insurance means insurance protecting lender against non-payment of or default on the loan. So when they default, they get paid and they're not out anything.
They're not out anything.
Why do they go ahead and foreclose on the homeowner? Why don't they just let the homeowner stay in their home?
They're not the ones foreclosing.
They gave it to a third-party debt collector?
According to the 2010 FBI mortgage fraud report that you can pull up, it says that the bank sells the copy of a mortgage or deed of trust for 7 to 9 cents per dollar, and then it is the attorneys that force it into foreclosure.
This sounds like multiple parties cooperating in a conspiracy of felony.
It's an out-and-out RICO case. But what sad part about it is they go into a court of law. The law states in Title 18474, actually it starts with 18470, 71, 2, 3, 4, and so on, that a security is a stone, a plate, a banknote, which is like your money that you spend at the McDonald's, a obligation, which is a bill of exchange between institutions, and security. So this is a security, a mortgage is a security, or a deed of trust is a security that is used as currency. So if they make a copy of it, it's a felony. You have to, whoever...
Just like if you make a copy of a $100 bill?
Exactly. And the courts are allowing attorneys to come into the courts with a copy and go forth with the execution.
A full-size copy, huh?
A full-size copy. The law says it must be shrunk 25%. They cannot issue any more certifications on it. Now, in our battle to get this information out, started in 2009, November 30th, I presented this to the FBI office in Toledo, Ohio. Jake Hardy was the FBI agent. He was in shock. He was just literally in shock. He said, this is systemic. You realize how big this is? I said, yeah. He wanted to know what I wanted him to do with it. I says, hey, I'm not an attorney. I can't tell you what to do with it. He says, what are you going to do? I says, again, I can't tell you. I'm not an attorney. On that year, 2009, between Christmas and New Year's, I had a call from a top official in the Supreme Court of the United States who I know, and I'd rather not mention her name right now, but she called me because she knew of my investigation work, and she saw my name on the report from Eric Holder, had accordingly or supposedly had this information. They had to do something. And I says, well, you have to shrink in all the courts. You have to give a memo out to all the courts, the clerks of courts, total United States, to shrink all mortgages or deeds of trust, and they cannot hand out any more certified copies unless they hold the original security instrument, which is the mortgage or deed of trust. She says, done. And so the month of January 2010, the memo went out and that was done. So today, if you go into a federal court and ask for a copy of a deed or a deed of trust or a mortgage, it will be shrunk. And they'll be glad to give it to you, but it will not be certified. So that was one big thing that we got the information out to, so they would do their job right, and they did. But now we have the state courts that are starting, some locations are starting to change. There's a case right now in Maine with Debbie Reagan that she had fought like Jackie and the rest of us. She'd spent everything that she had. She went to the Supreme Court of Appeals of Maine.
Pro per, right?
No, she had hired an attorney.
But the first time she went in pro per.
Yeah. And so then she got an attorney. They had fundraisers and got an attorney that would present the information that we had, as a group, had presented, and the Supreme Court of Maine Court of Appeals denied it, turned it down. Well, as a result, we knew it was wrong, and she was devastated. And my opinion was that we have to get to some location with somebody that has authority and is willing to use that authority, not for greed, not for anything else, but use the authority. So the currency of our country is handled by the Secret Service. They're the authority to deal with money and also the protecting our president. So I have called many offices, talked with some of the security specialists, was very friendly. They're very good people. Like one agent that I talked to in Ohio, he says, we've never been approached with this issue. He said, however, it is a security. And I said, all I wanted from them is a affidavit that's stating that a mortgage would be classified as a security with their notarized stamp on it and an affidavit. And he said, well, we're dealing with the president. This would have been in February this year. He says, we're dealing with the presidential election. And he said, but in April, he says, I think this should go to the Department of Justice. He says, because we are the enforcer, but the Department of Justice would be the one to give out the interpretation. So then I had contacted, after that, several agencies, including the one in LA. For some reason, the agent I talked to in LA, he says, is the press going to be involved with this? And I says, yes. He says, well, you're going to have to go with our Washington, D.C., and he gave me a number. It'll have to go to a press release or something like that they would have to get it cleared before they could deal with it. So I contacted them, and I have the names I kept, but I'd rather not use them for fear that it might be a retaliation for a good officer, because there are some good people in there. And they got me hooked up with a guy that was in a criminal investigation division, CID. And we talked for quite a while, and he says, you're right. He says, what can we do and how can we do to correct this? And I says, I don't know. But the thing of it is, these security instruments are floating in and out of the court and being used to take people's property. Now the question is, I don't think there's any doubt that there's an insurance policy on it. I mean, the country bailed out AIG and Merrill Lynch and Goldman Sachs and so forth were actually the underwriters of these mortgage-backed securities. So they are what they are. They're a bill of exchange. So the banks had, as it says here, were insured. If you look at the bottom line, the profit and loss in those years when they went into supposedly spiraling foreclosures, they had the largest profit that they've had in history. How could that happen? Maybe the insurance company made it happen? Must be. I hope that this is opening some of you folks' eyes to understand that information's there, but you gotta just look.
Thank you. That's quite a bite. I hope most people can get that. In a nutshell, I think what you're saying, if you make a Xerox copy of a $100 bill with one of the old machines that would allow you, that's a security fraud.
Counterfeit.
And they will arrest you for that.
Well,
So if you make a copy of this mortgage full size and certify it, like I think Joseph Holland did here in Santa Barbara County as our elected recorder, he created for himself a felony just by making a full-size copy, because only the original with the blue ink that the person actually signed can be full-size. And if that's destroyed, the bank has no right to collect. And not only that, if the bank or the recorder or anybody puts out a full-size copy, that's a felony, correct?
that's right. Here you've got another individual.
Let's see if I need my glasses. Yeah, it looks like Philip. Let's see what county this is. This is Philip J. Schmidt from Ventura County Clerk. Looks like he did a full-size copy of a deed of trust. Yeah, it looks like a mortgage. So, Philip, you're on the hook for a felony. He's probably not watching tonight because he's not probably sitting in the Santa Maria Comcast cable audience watching this Channel 25 production, which will later be on Channel 24 in Lompoc and another channel in Santa Barbara. I wonder if most of you people understand that. It's really simple. And I don't think attorneys are going to tell you that. And I talked to dozens, if not dozens and dozens of people who hired attorneys, members of the bar, and they never tell them this. They never attack the mortgage fraud this way. Now on my left side here, I want to introduce you, as I did before, Jackie Wiggins, the beautiful blonde on this side, compared to the handsome blonde on this side. Actually, I think I should call him Snow White. But we got a blonde here named Jackie, and she's not a dumb blonde. She fought them and is still fighting them 10 years. Jackie, you want to tell us, start with the first document you got here. I think Stephen's ready to bring it up when you're ready.
Okay. I want to thank you for having me here. Number
Well,
one,
you're very well, all the way from
Ohio. And our basketball NBA championship, by the way.
Oh.
And our Indians are doing great, by the way.
You got that in?
Had to get that in. I just want to say, as a retired banker, mother and grandmother, fight and keep fighting. To have the stamina to continue, to have the faith and confidence in yourself is no small task. I have talked to thousands of people. In 10 years, I have watched, I have gone to hearings regarding my bank, which is Deutsche Bank. And if any of you follow the internet, you know Deutsche Bank is in deep
trouble.
Deep trouble.
They just got raided in where? Frankfurt,
They just
Germany?
got raided Friday. Last
A
Friday.
week ago, and Friday.
By the Department of Justice.
And the German Department of Justice.
Yes.
And they carried away all their files, and they're short how many billions?
14 billion is the fine so far.
So
Now,
far.
Internal Revenue is there to collect for, of course, money that they
Billions.
Billions there. So it's really overflowing. The floodgates government are not ready to open. They're opening.
They're opening.
And I'm here to say and to prove to you that it's opening. People like myself, and I hope people that are at home are listening to this and will definitely fight the good fight to save the home, to save yourself, to save your sanity. And my main drive today is to see if I can help and if I could help one other person in addition to myself, I have accomplished my goal. And luckily, through there are some talk shows that you can phone in on and get information on. I have sat in on hearings regarding Deutsche Bank and how various cases were mishandled, how some attorneys do this and some do that. And to absolute blessing, I got hooked up with this gentleman here, right here, Mr. Tanner, who became my friend through the internet and through many interconnections and phone calls, who I feel, in my opinion, is the closest thing I know to an expert. I have had 2 lawyers. I have fired them both. It's possible. It's done all the time. There are proper channels. You don't just say, you're fired, goodbye. Everything's done to the honor of the court. You're always at the honor of the court. The lawyers don't really care. They haven't lost a dime, as these gentlemen were explaining earlier. They are stealing your home fraudulently. This is the biggest mortgage fraud scheme that has ever been blown up, and it is about to be the tsunami of the financial industry. Judges, prepare to go to jail with your bailiffs. Attorneys, start closing your foreclosure mills. We are coming big and strong, and after 10 years, as long as I have breath in my body, I will continue. For example, I'm just going to give you a little bit of motivation, which helps me every time I feel down and out, and that is a lot of times. One example, this is fairly recent, a young lady in Cleveland. Her name is Chanel Triplett. Pro se, meaning on her own, no attorney, through her own.
Bring that up.
It is really a tough thing to do, to get the stamina to stand up in court and defend yourself when you're at one table and to the right is another table with 12 to 15 attorneys that are ready to just steamroll right over you. You are nothing. You didn't go to law school. I went to college, but I did not go to law school. I have learned what I have learned from this good gentleman here, people that have called me, people I've contacted on the internet. So this is federal court in Ohio. This is a huge, huge win for the victims. This was reversed back. This young lady, this single young lady in Cleveland, is back in her home, and it was dismissed with prejudice, which is the operative word here, is with, meaning this cannot be brought back up. Many cases are dismissed without prejudice. The operative word is without, meaning if they dream up, find something, whatever, manufacture something, fabricate something, it could be brought back in 10 years. Another case I have, which is the bomb, and I'm saying it in a flattering explanation, Judge Christopher Boyko. This was in the Cleveland Plain Dealer for weeks. This came before a federal judge, Christopher Boyko. He had, each one of these are a case. Each one of these is a person with a home. Each one of these. And Deutsche Bank said, we want them all. We've got the copy of the note. We have the copy of the deed, which Mr. Tanner explained quite thoroughly.
Is a felony.
Thank you. And Judge Christopher Boyko, I kid you not, took his gavel and threw it. I don't know if it was intentional. I hope it was. Threw it at the attorney and said, I'm dismissing all of these cases, and all of these attorneys are to leave now. There's hope. You have got, the one thing they want you to do is to give up, let go, move on. This is absolutely proof positive that through work, teamwork, whether you do it alone like this young gal. Now, these are federal courts. I don't know how the state of California runs, but I'm sure it's a lot tougher, and you have different levels of court and authority. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of emotional strain and drain where I've done it many times. I've thrown the papers in the air and said, I'm done. I am just done. They're not taking my house.
You get frustrated.
Frustrated. You don't think, eat, sleep, or whatever. You're afraid to tell your family, your parents, even at my age, I'm losing my home. Where am I going? They're not stealing my home. Another really, really good one.
You missed the statement by Jefferson. I think we should read this.
I would love to. May I borrow? I think this is great. I don't know how many of you know this, but I've kept this for 10 years. I love this analogy. I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around the banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up on the continent their fathers conquered. Issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people who it properly belongs.
We the people.
Thank you.
We the people. Not the banks.
Who said that?
Thomas Jefferson.
And many others.
He was the third president of the United States. So this is not a new issue. This has probably been going on, this horrific crime against me personally around people that I think banks sought out in whichever manner. I am not an attorney. I didn't take any type of law school. I'm just somebody that was persistent and looked up things and read things and pulled cases and attended cases, got some really good help from some really super people, and then all of a sudden you're in a library and you're typing something and you're seeing somebody else is looking up a civil case or mortgage fraud or securities, and the banks are betting their last dime you won't last. I've been in many hearings. Cleveland, Ohio is inundated. When I say inundated, there are continuing so many foreclosures in the Cleveland, Detroit, Eastern, still to this day, foreclosures pursuing, such as my own, that they had to shift some of the workload from the judges to the magistrates. By the time I would get my hearing date and a new magistrate, and I was thinking possible modification, by the way, I would never do a modification. That's my personal opinion. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a professional. You're not starting a new contract on bad news. Number one, they committed a crime. They need to be put in jail, not offer me a remedy. I need to remedy them and put them out of business and put them in jail.
Well, you're not alone. A former supervisor for Bank of America appeared here about 2 years ago. Her name was Candace Jones, and she wasn't on a local bank level.
Right.
She was between the regional and the corporate level, dealing with corporate top B of A.
But what did they do? B of A sold them all off to Nation Star. Wells Fargo sold theirs off. Now they're with SLS, SPS, all these other little debt collectors. So they got out from under your settlement totally. They gave you money to help the people. You set up a group of bureaucracy out here to help the people. And what do they tell me? I'm sorry, we can't help the people. So, yeah, I am very disappointed in what's going on. The documents, like they were talking about with Marina, I looked at all 500 of the documents that she used in that audit, and all 500 were fraudulent. Out of the 100 people that have come to me, I've looked at their documents. All of them should be suing the banks. All of them should come back and sue you for not doing what you should do.
You get a banker, like ex-banker like Jackie here, or Candace Jones, who's retired, and getting her pension from a big bank, one of those that had, I think, 100,000 mortgages frozen so they couldn't be foreclosed on here. Listen, we're going to go back to that wonderful time we did the California 18. Watch this, just Candace Jones.
First off, I'm a retired banker. I'm not proud to say that today. Can you hear me? I'm not proud to say that today. I was for years up until the 90s, since I started in the 70s. And I personally have read the National Mortgage Settlement. I've read the TARP program. I read the DOJ. And one thing I could tell immediately when I read this, and Camilla Harris, I can tell that you didn't write this. I can tell that you probably had a few words in it, but the rest of it was written by the banks. One thing you can always be sure of with the bank is that they will promise you the moon, and in the end, they'll take it back. They have wonderful little words they love to slip in, and if anyone ever read the TARP, you could know that it was only suggested that they do modification for these people. Now, first off, I don't believe in these modifications because it's modified fraud, just as Renee said. These documents are fraudulent, and everything I've seen. Over the last 3 years, I've probably worked with about 100 different people, friends that have come to me. Because after I retired, they knew how long I'd been in the business. They knew also that I was an expert with the FDIC, and also I was with the Resolution Trust that took down the savings and loans. So, Camilla, I have to tell you right up front, honey, I think you sold us out. I think you sold out California. And your citizens deserve much better than that. You're not the only Attorney General that did it. All the rest of them did it with the exception of Snyderman. And we can be thankful at least one person or a couple there held out. But I truly am ashamed to say you're our Attorney General. One thing I want to tell you is that you started the moderator for the Attorney General. You were quite proud of that came out of the National Mortgage Settlement. Well, let me tell you how that's working out for the people. Because, like I said, I've helped a few people, and I have spoken with your moderators, and they are truly just spokesmen for the banks, okay? They don't know what they're doing. Most of the people at the banks don't know what they're doing. I deal with corporate, and I know when they're lying to me. And I want to tell you just a couple of real quick stories. One of them is a widow, okay, with 2 children that are special needs children. She has a sister that is in the 4th stage of cancer. We worked with Wells Fargo on a loan modification because she didn't have the courage or the stamina for a lawsuit. So we worked for 3 years with Wells Fargo. After 3 years, 1,060 documents faxed to the bank, 147 phone calls to the bank. In the end, they said that it's not in the investor's best interest to modify this loan. Okay, now she's in a lawsuit. We're backing her up every way we can. I've documented these calls. In the meantime, before they denied her, I was working with your moderator. And let me tell you what the moderator said. There's not really anything we can do to help you. And I asked one of your people at the moderator, I said, here's what I want. I want a copy of the pooling and servicing agreement. If this woman's in a supposed trust, which there again, the bank doesn't know who her investor is, because I've received 2 letters from Wells Fargo. One letter states it's U.S. Bank. The other letter states that it was Goldman Sachs. They don't know because it's not with an investor. Okay, these trusts closed. They're no longer trading on SEC. They already have closed these trusts. Investors have taken the tax write-off from the IRS. These things have been bought back. Okay, and whenever you call the bank, the first thing they say to you, we are a debt collector. These are people that have bought up bad credit card debt, unsecured debt, that are now pretending to be a lender, saying
Exactly. That is exactly.
well, they
Say
are.
that one again.
They are pretending to be your lender when they are, in fact, a debt collector. I always had the phrase that I called debt collectors the little mafia because they just come at you with both guns. And they don't have anything to come after. It's an unsecured debt that they're coming after you, and they're modifying. When, in fact, they do, after a couple of years, modify these loans, they put in the document, you cannot come back at us and sue us for anything wrongdoing in the past. Okay, first off, that's illegal, too, to take away your legal rights to sue them. But it's in every loan modification packet. And just to show you an example, here's a banker box full of this one woman's file that is now in a lawsuit with the bank. So these are the 1,060 documents that I personally, being a banker, faxed in that they claim they never got. I have another gentleman, Bank of America, all of them are in it. Bank of America simply said after 10 submissions by this gentleman, now keep in mind the bank does get back $1,500 from your settlement, Camilla, every time they offer to help the people. So why do they want you to submit 10 times? That's $1,500 a pop. After the 10th time and working with your moderator again, explaining to him that Bank of America came back and said, you are declined for this modification because we do not have contractual authority from the investor. There again, they don't know who the investor is. So I thought, okay, if you say this is Wells Fargo's the investor, I'll write Wells Fargo. I did write them. Wells Fargo came back and said it's against our contractual authority to tell them if they can modify or not. We don't care. I took these 2 letters and sent them to your moderator, who came back and told the homeowner, I'm sorry, we really just can't help you, and I cannot get you the PSA to prove it because the trust is not even trading anymore. But, you can do a deed in lieu of, or you can do a short sale. And I explained to him that he'd been there for 30 years, and yes, he will get something done on this home if I have to keep him there another 30 years. So after that, they were so upset with me at B of A, and they do like to hang up on me. They don't like, I think they've got my number down, but they sold him off. And another thing they did to you, Camilla, in your national mortgage settlement you put all these restrictions, okay, even though with their little loopholes in there. But what did they do? B of A sold them all off to Nation Star. Wells Fargo sold theirs off. Now they're with SLS, all these other little debt collectors. So they got out from under your settlement totally. They gave you money to help the people. You set up a group of bureaucracy out here to help the people. And what do they tell me? I'm sorry, we can't help the people.
Wow. Imagine that. We can't help the people. After 10 loan modification applications, the bottom line is, I'm sorry, we collected a lot of money on your applications, but we can't help you. That's what the bailout was all about, to bail out the banks, not the people. The government is upside down because the bankers are above it all, and they're controlling all branches of government, which brings me to something I want to call your attention to. What I have in front of me, which you're probably wondering what these brown lumps are, these are original New England State Archives, official archive books that were published by the state. This one is from the state of Connecticut, 1838. This one in the package is 1822. This is the state of Maine. And this one is 1835, Connecticut. And this one that I've got protected is from Rhode Island. And this one is from, what's the date on this? I got to open it up. I don't know if I can show you this, but I'm going to read you what's in here because it's really, really important and goes directly to the problem we have today. This is the state of Rhode Island and Providence plantations, their public laws, and the United States Constitution and its amendments. And it has the address of President Washington's address of September 1796. And this was printed, people, in 1822. 1822. Now, what do you find in all four of these volumes? Two from Connecticut, one from Rhode Island, one from the state of Maine. In here, you have the Bill of Rights, the first 10. Then you have the 11th Amendment. Then you have the 12th Amendment. Then you have something you can't find anywhere today. It's Article 13 of the amendments. And it reads like this. If any citizen of the United States shall accept, claim, receive, or retain any title of nobility or honor, or shall without the consent of Congress accept and retain any present pension, office, or emolument of any kind whatever from any emperor, king, prince, or foreign power, such person shall cease to be a citizen of the United States. And United States is not all caps, it's only the first letter is capitalized United States, and shall be incapable of holding any office of trust or profit under them or either of them. It's right there in black and white, people, right there. Now, this 13th Amendment is in these books in 1822, 1839, 1830, 1836, and the statutes at large of Virginia back to 1812. When I grew up in high school, and I'm sure the same with Roger when he was a young dude, and well, he's still pretty young. He colors his hair white now. But did they teach you the 13th Amendment was passed after?
Not at all.
They didn't. What did they teach you?
Very little about legal history or legal anything. There was very little. That's something they basically you don't find out anything until you get old enough until they use you.
Slid past that.
Yeah.
Did you get any education about our original 13th Amendment, Jackie?
Nothing in high school and nothing in college.
Yeah, and I went to law school. I went to Western State Law School after Van Norman Law School took my money, and then the next day went out of business. I mean, talk about crooked. They took my money, thank you for the next 5-month semester, and the next day they went out of business. That was my first lesson in attorney ethics, because it was run by attorneys. I don't know if Mr. Van Norman was a good attorney or bad. I think he'd been long dead by the time I got there in 1974. But they went out of business, took my money, bye-bye, nothing you can do about it. Well, If you listen to what I read, they shall be incapable. That means it's null and void if they're elected to anything. They can't hold office. Now, didn't Dick Cheney accept an honorary knighthood from the Queen of England?
Yes.
Did he get permission from Congress? I don't think so. I don't recall hearing that anywhere. But even if they just join the bar, what does bar stand for? British Accreditation Registry. Isn't that right, Roger?
Yes.
Isn't that right, Jackie?
Absolutely.
People, I wouldn't lie to you. I'm not an attorney, so I don't have to lie to you. Got that? That was an inside joke.
They're called esquires.
Yeah, some still say Esquire. Back east, some of them still have Esquire after their name. Esquire is the lowest rank in nobility. So if they have that nobility, but the bigger thing is they belong to the British Accreditation Registry of Ohio or New Jersey or California or Vermont or whatever state, Texas. If you see that word bar, I'm a member of the bar. They lost their right to be elected to a judgeship, to a district attorney prosecutor, to the presidency as a congressman. They can't even be elected to city council. They lost their citizenship in almost every elected office. And all four of these books, which, by the way, you can get on eBay for $300 or $400 or $500 in some kind of edition. I paid $1,000 a piece for these because I wanted them in good condition so I could read you. And these are not reprints. These are the actual books printed back in the early 1800s, 30, 40 years before the anti-slavery, anti-involuntary servitude 13th Amendment, which they gloss over that too in high school. Why didn't they teach you this? Why don't we find in our current constitutional archives a repeal of this original? Because, people, think about it. Why didn't they repeal it? Because the people back in those days would have stormed the state capitals. They would have stormed Congress and said, "What are you doing?" There were counties and even states like West Virginia which you would be arrested if you just came into the jurisdiction and said, "I'm an attorney." Already put the handcuffs, take them to jail. They didn't even want attorneys around. They knew how crooked they were. And this is part of the reason. This started in 1810. And I believe the ratification process was complete by 1812. But Virginia didn't publish it in their statutes, I think, till 1819. Why? Because we had the War of 1812. That war was not just over young Americans being taken off of civilian ships and put in the King's Navy, or them putting soldiers in our houses. That was over this amendment, the original. There you see it, 13th Amendment. Read it again. If any citizen of the United States shall accept, claim, even if you just claim, you are incapable of holding. It's one paragraph, people. It's very short. Why has this been left out of all our school books